Beg your pardon? Forgot to knock.
Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond was a peculiar one.
I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. A relic of the Cold War.
His films gave us some real highs, iconic theme songs, some genuinely terrible Bond girls, and plot points so absurd that it almost killed the franchise 7 years after he resuscitated it.
She always did enjoy a good squeeze.
On this week's episode, we're getting into Brosnan's run, the mess that came before it, and how his four films shaped the Bond franchise for the next 2 decades. This is the Two Place podcast, where we discuss all things pop culture and entertainment. Let's start the show.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Okay, let's start with our relationship with the Brosnan era, right? I'll keep mine short. I personally never liked Brosnan much as Bond. I know he ticks a lot of boxes. He's very suave. He used to be able to pull off even the most terrible of Bond quips. Just felt too, for lack of a better term, metrosexual. I felt like his Bond lacked a certain physicality. Maybe I'm, looking at this post Craig, and that is also maybe coloring a bit of my vision. I mean, given the fact that Craig is my favorite Bond. And also, this is not Pierce Brosnan's fault, but for the most part, his Bond films aren't great, except for one, of course. So,
Yeah.
I know I'm generalizing. So my relationship is all right. My dad's favorite Bond is Brosnan, which is surprising because he's been a Bond fan through his life, and I feel the long-standing Bonds generally prefer Connery. But my dad's two favorite Bonds are Brosnan and Moore, and I was like, Roger Moore.
You'd be very surprised how common that view is, because my dad's favorite Bond is Roger Moore, my aunt's favorite Bond is Roger Moore, and I think this is more to do with the fact that they grew up around the era. So I mean, my
Probably.
parents are kids of the 60s, so they're too young to be like, to have paid attention to the Sean Connery Bond films. But Roger
Yeah.
Moore definitely a lot more, given the fact that by the time they were teenagers or early or pre-teens, Roger Moore was starting to become Bond, and he was Bond between, I think, 73 right up to about 82. So there were a bunch of
Yeah.
films in there that where he took on that role. So the association for them is, oh, he was a very strong part of my childhood, so he will always be Bond for me. And for a certain way, that's also the case with me with Pierce Brosnan. Daniel Craig is still my favorite Bond, has been since Casino Royale dropped. But for me, Pierce Brosnan for a very long time signified what I envisioned a spy would look like. Like suave, who doesn't really break a sweat, and very good looking, tall, like tall, dark, and handsome. They're essentially ticking boxes off. When movies like GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough were in theaters, I was very intrigued by the Bond character, because I thought all spies were meant to be these like these really too smooth to ever exist kind of prototypes. And
Yeah.
having seen a lot of Pierce Brosnan's Bond films over the last couple of years, or at least over the last 20 odd years, I'd say they hold a special place in my heart for very different reasons, which we'll get to.
Right.
So my association with the Bond films, especially with Pierce Brosnan's Bond films, were basically my entry point to the franchise. And I think you always say you never forget your first. For me, that's Pierce Brosnan's Bond, because it is very much like my
Please
my
use a
gateway
different,
into
better
this.
phrase.
No, I'm not. I mean, this is Pierce Brosnan took my Bond virginity.
That should go on the cover of Die Another Day.
Exactly,
My
man.
Bond virginity, Abhin Shetty.
But anyway,
But let's dig a little deeper. Do you want to maybe just start with a brief history of? I know you have history of Bond at large as a backdrop, but specifically the Dalton years, I guess, is what you really want to talk about as a sort of segue into Brosnan, right?
Yes. So, okay, I'll just do like a very quick recap of Bond and then we'll jump into the Brosnan years. So, this shouldn't take longer than 30 seconds. So, this is your 30-second history lesson of the James Bond franchise. So, I think Bond was written by Ian Fleming, who was a British naval intelligence officer and who, at the spare time, who I have just found out, who had a house in Jamaica and the house was named GoldenEye, which I
Yeah.
don't think I remember ever reading. So this is like a new realization for me. So over the course of many summers, he wrote several books on the James Bond character, and I think it really catapulted to fame after JFK included From Russia with Love is on one of his must-read lists. And at the same time, between the 50s, Albert Cubby Broccoli, who is the legendary producer behind the Bond films, was trying to get the rights to it, was unable to, ended up getting the rights somewhere in the early 60s, and that's when the Bond franchise, as we know, officially took off. Sean Connery was cast as the titular character, and not no, that would be Dr. No, that's wrong. Sean Connery was cast as James Bond, and then Dr. No was released to great success. Very different kind of film if you've seen it, like compared to the rest of the Bond films. Dr. No operates at a very different frequency. It's a slow, like espionage spy thriller compared to what you'd get with Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. And then between, I think, the 60s to the 70s, I think we had about 15 odd Bond movies that released, or just under 15. Yeah, around 15 odd Bond films across both Connery, Lazenby, as well as Roger Moore. And then I think by the time, yeah. Hey, to be fair, I am of the opinion that Lazenby's Bond probably has one of the better Bond films, but we'll get to that in another episode, which is
Yeah.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But then we get to the 80s where Roger Moore is 57 and he on A View to a Kill, and he looks like this geriatric old fool. It's just not working. Like the franchise is like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And at the time of casting, I think Albert Broccoli wanted Pierce Brosnan, who was on NBC as Remington Steele. I mean, he was cast and he was going to take up the role, given that Remington Steele had just ended, but NBC, out of spite, ended up extending Remington Steele by a season, officially tying Brosnan back in for another season. And Broccoli was like, I'm out, he will never be Bond. And they cast Timothy Dalton instead, which was in The Living Daylights. I think Living Daylights was a bit of a moderate success. It still was earned enough to spawn a sequel in License to Kill. Now, my favorite bit of trivia about License to Kill, which is a movie I quite like, is that it was originally called License Revoked, but was changed from License Revoked to License to Kill because Americans didn't understand the word revoked.
I mean, prescient. The education system was corroding way back in 1987. So, and I mean, you understand it. Just saying, this calling a movie license revoked sounds like Bond got caught for parking traffic violations. Parking violation, not paid his tickets. So,
could we?
Your license is revoked. You can't drive.
You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to pay the fine. Anyway, License to Kill is this word brutal, shark maiming kind of film where Felix Leiter almost dies and Bond goes on a personal vendetta. Did a fair bit of business, but was a hit. But I think at the time, much like what happened to Bond in the late 90s and the early 2000s, the stereotypical action hero was being reshaped in the 80s, right? Like you had these macho men in the likes of Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and in the Commandos and the
steroid shops,
Cobra,
you could call them.
Basically steroid shops. I think that's a better term. So I think even Die Hard or somewhere around this time, if I'm not mistaken. No, Die Hard is 1998. 88. Huh? So definitely, like, this is the mold of the action hero is being reshaped. So alongside that, there is this one funny little thing that happens, which is the Berlin Wall comes down in 1989. And Bond, who was forever this figure associated with the Cold War between the US and the Soviets, was just like, it felt like, okay, he's kind of, as M would go on to say in GoldenEye, a relic of the Cold War. That was happening. There was a bit of a rights issue between Eon and MGM at the time. So Bond was in like stasis for about 6 years, 1989 to 1995, which is the
Yeah.
longest they've gone. And I think will be trumped now, given the fact that we're in 2026 and there is no sign of a James Bond film in sight. So at the time, I think they went back to Brosnan, who at the time was 41, and he accepted the role, and we arrived at GoldenEye, directed by Martin Campbell, starring, of course, Pierce Brosnan, Famke Janssen, Elektra, when I'm saying Sean Bean, and Isabella Scorupco?
Skorupko. Yeah.
So that was the reintroduction, like the 90s, the millennial Bond was born. I mean, could you say the millennial Bond? Basically, the Bond for the new age was born. So it's basically like the introduction to Bond. But before we jump into it, between the Moore and the Connery and the Lazenby and the Dalton era, what is your go-to Bond?
Interesting.
When I say go-to Bond, I mean movie. Like, what is the movie that you enjoy?
Oh, you're saying what is my basically you're saying what is my Craig favorite Bond? Thunderball.
Fair. Thunderball is fun. I would have gone either Thunderball or for me, Goldfinger. Like, I've seen Goldfinger an insufferable number of times.
I mean, I don't know if this is a good time to bring up this. I don't think this is a very hot take either. I think at this point it's common sense. But I think it's as good a time as I need to bring this up. I think Bond is a terrible spy. Right? The concept of Bond itself is a terrible spy. Firstly, he does not know any language other than English. He speaks with a British accent, a proper upper class, RP accent. Doesn't seem to know any other language. Maybe he understands, but he can't speak a second language either, right? Which makes him worse off than any average Indian child. Right? So can't do that. He is, for the most part, ridiculously good looking, which is a terrible property for a spy to have. You need to be as unnoticed and unremarkable as possible. He is walking around in Savile Row suits, just looking 10 on 10 and just catching everyone's eye. He's going to be remembered by everybody, right? He does not seem to have any of the typical skills that spies need to have, which is the ability to track, the ability to be patient and keep at something until you don't get results on the first day, right? Bond seems to be living a charmed existence where he's always at the right place at the right time. I get that this is movie logic, so I'll excuse that part. But on the first 2 points, I'm like, could you not make this person stand out less and be a little more competent? Literally, his competency is to get drunk and have sex. That is literally his competency.
I think the plot happens in spite of him. Is in spite of his effort. Like,
but I just wanted to sort of put that out there. But with that aside, and putting that aside, let's. I want to hear your thoughts on GoldenEye.
I love GoldenEye. This is one of my favorite Bond films. It's like it's gritty enough, yet it maintains some of that playfulness of the older Bond films and basically the franchise in general. And it has two things. So I think I love the Bond villain. I think Sean Bean makes a great bad guy. I think the Isabella Scorupco is a gorgeous Bond woman. Not much to do, but still, like, compared to what came before, has significantly a lot more material. A great theme song, and another thing that I was missing.
Famke Janssen, bro, she's fucking
of course,
insane in this movie. Psychotic character.
This is without a shred of doubt my favorite Bond henchwoman / henchman of all time, right? Like, this is
seriously.
Xenia Onatopp is one of.
Her name is Onatopp. Dude.
It's like, this is a woman, this weird, crazy Russian general who kills people by strangling them to death with their thighs. Oh my! This is probably the only. I'm not even joking. Out of all the crazy, absurd Bond villains or people that have existed in the franchise, this is the one that I think would be the most rooted in reality, especially today. Somebody like this could 100% definitely exist. Like,
and
even
she's
the
a
nature
legit
of this,
dominatrix. She's making money on OF adjacent sites, right? Like,
I would just be like, even when I watched it for the first time, I was like, oh my, I don't know what to feel when I'm watching this scene. Like, I generally don't know.
even the scene they meet, she's like, Xenia Onatopp. Bond is like, Onatopp? Yes, on a top. Like too absurd for Bond also.
I love Moneypenny's like little quip when he's getting information about Onatopp. She's like, "Don't worry, James. I trust you to stay on top of things." And I was like, "Wonderful. This is this is my kind of humor."
And I don't know what her director's notes were, but Famke Janssen took something and came on set. Her character seems to like relish pain. Like somebody even hits her, she's just like, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are
You
you
know,
behaving like?
the whiplash that I have from this is because my first introduction to Famke Janssen is Jean Grey, right? She's Jean Grey in the
Right.
X-Men series. Now, why would like, because which sane parent would let their child watch GoldenEye when this is happening? My parents were great parents that way. So when I eventually got to GoldenEye, my I was just like, what is Jean Grey doing? What is
Yeah.
happening here? I did not know actors could have such range where you play this really psychologically disturbed, underrated, like very like muted character, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have her killing dudes with her thighs. Love it, absolutely love
Yeah.
it. One of my favorite Bond villains of all time.
Standout character of the film for me. I mean, the fact that we're spending so much time, uh, so much of a chunk of time off GoldenEye on her is super memorable. But yes, moving on from Xenia on a top, just the film in general, I think I agree with you, right? Far and away the strongest Brosnan Bond film. Um I was in fact in my mind debating between Thunderball and GoldenEye when you asked me that question earlier. I didn't want to say GoldenEye because I wanted to leave the discussion
Hmm.
for this section, but honest answer, I think GoldenEye slightly nudges Thunderball for me again because closer to our time. So
Mhm.
I think I relate to it a little bit more. Like you said, great villain in Sean Bean.
Not even before we
Sorry,
get to the motivations, I think we'd be remiss in our duty if we did not mention the franchises. There's a first that happens in this franchise, right? Where M, who has been historically played by Bernard Lee, and I think there was another character that I mistake, not Bernard Lee. So,
Jonathan
man,
Brown or somebody.
they were no. Anyway, I put their names up. The two guys. The one guy played. It's going to really irritate me when I see it. He played M for the majority of the films, and then for a couple of films, he was replaced by somebody. This is the first time M is played by a woman in Judi Dench. It sells. Like I think the moment
Yeah.
you see her, you're like, yeah, this is M. And I think it was because I think 3 years prior, the boss at MI5, Stella Remington, was appointed, and she who herself was the first um, woman to have led the organization. So this is very much like a callback to that. And I think she's excellent in this movie and excellent in the franchise as it progresses. But
Yeah,
we'll get
yeah,
to that later.
yeah. I completely agree. I think great addition of Judi Dench as M. And like I was saying, in terms of the Bond villain as well, grounded motivations, the way in which he wants to bring those to fruition. I mean, it's a Bond film, right? At the end of the day, it has to be a little larger than life. It's not insane, right? Like we'll get to some of the coming films. You're just like, this plan doesn't make sense, right? That is not as much the case with Alec Trevelyan, although I think he's built a very fanciful image in his head. But anyway, I digress. Like I said, good villain, good first outing for Bond. Brosnan doesn't look 41. You feel like you're getting a youthful Bond back. Good Bond girls, if you were to call Xenia on a top of Bond girl. All in all, there's very little to criticize in the film, right? I think
I love the
more or less
opening
nothing.
sequence as well.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the
yeah,
opening sequence, I was literally watching it this morning just before we started. And that bungee jump off the dam, and then
yeah.
the sequence where he flies the plane's flying off the cliff, and he's riding a bike off the cliff, and he jumps off the bike to get into the plane. As absurd as it sounds, great fun.
Punch in the dick for physics, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, whatever. It's Bond film. I think any sort of logical plot hole that we encounter will be like
Yeah,
Bond movie.
it's a Bond film.
Okay.
So, given that GoldenEye ticks most of the boxes, I'm guessing there isn't much for us to critique, and not much for us to say that hasn't already been said. I think it's the following three movies where things get a little interesting for us to dig into because there's so much happening, right? And I think it's more fun to get into the nitty-gritties of the next three films, starting of course with 97's Tomorrow Never Dies, starring Pierce Brosnan, Terry Hatcher, Jonathan Pryce, Michelle Yeoh. Who else am I missing? These are the main four that I remember. And the story basically revolves around, I don't know how else to put it, this media mogul who wants to influence world events to profit off of. Right? I'm
Yeah.
trying to make
Mm.
it make sense. And I
He's
still
essentially
struggle.
using, yeah. So I think he has this submarine that's causing issues somewhere in the fucking between two nations, and he is
Yeah.
using their strife and their conflict to drive up TRP ratings for his channel.
So, which is the my problem with the core conceit, right? If you're an arms dealer, so he's basically trying to get UK and China to fight. Which, first of all, I'm like, UK and China is so random, right? US and China, I understand. Let's be real. The Bond movies can be in denial as much as they want. Nobody gives a rat's ass about fighting with UK anymore. They get fucking what? Firstly, second, he wants to do this to. If you're an arms dealer and you're selling arms to both sides, then like, okay, makes sense. Or if you're whatever petro baron and there's some oil in the Middle East and you're engineering events there, I understand. I can respect that hustle as a that villain's hustle. If you're engineering war between two countries to drive TRP ratings, I'm like, what do kaudi ka super villain you are doing? Fucking no ambition. Your metrics suck ass. If they had gone a little further, right? Use media to influence public opinion, to engineer world events that will benefit you. I can respect that because that is happening in our world right now.
Hmm.
The Murdochs and Maxwells of the world. By doing that, they're gaining a lot more in terms of money, power, influence than
Hmm.
saying, I will. This is doing it backwards, right? What the Murdochs of the world are doing is using media to engineer world events. This guy is engineering
Hmm.
world events to grow TRP ratings. I'm just like, bro, गलत हो गया यार.
I think this is probably in my least favorite Bond in this series because it's just so
Yeah,
boring and so
it's
inconsequential.
very
Like it's just,
boring.
I mean, I
And
like Michelle
Jonathan Price
Yeoh
is
and
not a good villain. Not a good
yeah, and
villain.
I think it it had a troublesome production schedule as well. I think the director Roger Spottiswoode, I don't even know what else he's done. He was so
Most is
he
that new most British name, man. Spotswood.
yeah. Mhm. He was in constant clashes with MGM regarding the tone of this film, and I think it didn't help that it had the same release weekend as the Titanic. Talk about a
Yeah,
sinking ship. So it's quite literally, it didn't do too well, and I don't like this Bond. I mean, there's one. So I think what I read is that, which if you watch the movie, you realize. So KD Lang, the music artist from the 90s, was initially brought on to do the title track, and she has a song called Surrender, which they didn't feel was like Bondy enough, and they threw to the end credits. And the entire score of the film is built around it. And they got Sheryl Crow because they thought it'd be a bigger name and it would sell more records. And I don't mind the Bond theme song in this. It's just okay. It's like it's a little uninspiring. And I think the KD Lang track at the end is far more superior. There's not a lot I like about this film. In fact, I think this is, like I said, this is very much a run of the mill, even though the subject matter is probably very close to reality, given like what you said about the Maxwells and the Murdochs of the world are up to. It takes it, obviously, you have to dial it up to 11 given the absurdity of this, that these plots must have. But there's not much. I only liked, I think, Michelle Yeoh's sequences, especially the one where they're essentially handcuffed to the BMW and that fight sequence that they're driving through.
yeah.
That was entertaining. She's a pretty kick-ass Bond girl, but I didn't ever sense any sort of chemistry between her and Brosnan. I don't think they
At
just
all.
worked.
I think this Bond film does the crime of being very unremarkable. It's not terribly good or terribly bad, which is what makes it entirely forgettable, right? If you're a Bond film, I would rather you be at least memorably bad. This isn't even that. It's just like, yeah, cool, okay.
Even the game that came with this, I had the PS1 game of Tomorrow Never Dies, and it was very unremarkable. which is
Yeah.
saying a lot given that, and we hadn't forgot to mention this, that GoldenEye's N64 game is like considered a classic in the genre, right? This is one of the first
Yeah.
movie tie-in games that was so successful because it was so good and it had an
Yeah.
amazing score. I think people to this day still keep making reels about how the paused screen music was so iconic. And then Tomorrow
Yeah.
Never Dies shows up, and much like the film, it's a very middling entry into the gaming franchise as well.
I mean, think of this is my opinion, but Moonraker is a
Hmm.
terrible film, but it's memorable
Hmm.
because of how over the top cartoonish it is.
I mean,
Like
it was
from premise to
basically
execution, it was just Star Wars. It was riding the Star Wars
yeah,
wave.
yeah.
It's a terrible film, and I'm like, I remember it a lot more. I like Tomorrow Never Dies. I'm just like, if you say so, cool.
It's not a Bond film I revisit. I'll just say that. I think there are other
Yeah.
films in the Brosnan era that I have watched a significant number of times more than I have watched Tomorrow Never Dies. I don't quite enjoy this film.
Yeah. Moving on from that to 1999's The World Is Not Enough. Again, starring Brosnan, of course. Sophie Marceau,
Robert
Denise
Carlyle.
Richards, Robert Carlyle, Robbie Coltrane returning from GoldenEye as well, playing Zukov, if I remember correctly. I think his name is
Zukov, yeah.
Zukov, yes. Anybody else that I'm missing? I think the other key players.
I think this is the last Bond film to feature Desmond Llewellyn as Q, which is the one where he says always have an escape plan, and like he goes back into he goes on. I think John Cleese is introduced as the new quartermaster, and Desmond Llewellyn is essentially retiring. And I think he died, I think 3 weeks after this movie was released in a car crash. So which made that last line he
Car
said,
crash.
yeah, and always have an escape plan, all the more iconic. So
Yeah.
I mean, this movie directed by Michael Apted, who had done what is that, Gorillas in the Mist, like a documentary filmmaker. And from the little bit of trivia I know about this movie is that he hired his then wife to like do an uncredited rewrite of the script because he wanted to tap into the emotional side of Bond. And I would go on to say that this film has simultaneously one of the best Bond girls of all time and one of the worst Bond girls of all time. I would say Sophie Marceau's Elektra King is perfection. If there was no Vesper Lind, I think
S-tier.
this would have been S tier, definitely. Like I think I'd say S plus would probably be Vesper Lind in terms of just character development and the kind of impact she had on screen. I think Sophie Marceau's turn as Elektra King is spot on. I love the fact that Renard's, even how each Bond villain has this weird thing, like a weird thing about them. This is, for me, I found this the most interesting with Renard, given that there's a bullet lodged in his skull that's slowly making its way into his medulla, and as it happens, he's starting to lose all sensation possible. So he's this walking weird, like almost like this undead kind of creature. And I found that to be very interesting just from a character perspective. The film's plot is just, again, what? Like nuclear war and...
No, I mean, it's about getting control of the oil supply in the Middle East by bombing a pipeline in Istanbul. Firstly, this is again the plot line. The plot line is more believable than increasing TRP ratings, right? I respect this plot line. I respect this end goal, whatever is driving
Yeah.
Renard. Cool.
Uh,
Cool. At least you're doing something which benefits you greatly versus TRP ratings. Start Big Boss, dude. You're so worried about TRP ratings. But anyways, the point
that should
is,
be a Bond movie where Bond infiltrates the Big Boss house.
So I respect his end goal, but the more I was watching, I mean, now when I was rewatching and I was rereading the plot, I was just like, this is basically what's happening in Iran right now. Right? You're trying to control oil pipelines, trying to engineer some global catastrophe which didn't need to happen just so you can gain control of oil pipelines or oil this thing through the Middle East. Like, okay, so far checks out with the Iran war. Then I was looking into, okay, bullet lodged in his brain and he's behaving erratically. He's losing control of his extremities. I'm like, has somebody x-rayed Trump's brain? Should we do that? Like, because he's shitting, he's farting, he's sharting in the Oval Office during press conferences. clearly he can't control. But anyway, I digress.
Oh,
Cognitive decline is 100% there. Senility, dementia, call it what you want. I'm like, forget everything else. Can somebody just get Trump to X-ray his brain? He's telling media, I dislike the Pope. He's soft on crime. What crime? He's head of a religious church. Why does he have to be hard on crime?
I think with Trump in the office, there is never a boring day. He always,
Yeah,
it's just,
but it's never for the better. It's always for the worse. The fact that it's never a boring
yeah,
day.
that's
I
a
love a
whole other,
boring
yeah,
day.
that's, yeah, I too at this point would love a boring day. Like one day where I'm like, okay, done, bye.
But anyways, coming back. So, eh, in Robert Carlyle's Renard, you have a great villain, very memorable and to be expected, right? Robert Carlyle is an outstanding performer. If nothing else, he knows how to portray people who are on the edge, right from his train spotting days. And I agree, Sophie Marceau, I think, has great chemistry with Pierce Brosnan, which is why, without giving away spoilers per se, which is why what transpires in the film impacts that much harder, right? And I guess she has that French elegance. I don't know how else to like. They have I don't want to say je ne sais quoi because that's very cliched, but she has that X factor, right? So, and she really that really works for the film. Denise Richards, yeah,
Dr.
I
Christmas
mean,
Jones,
she's a what? Nuclear physicist.
physicist. Yeah.
She's wearing hot, like those short pants and a tank top, and she's walking around. I'm just like, whoever wrote this, have you met physicists?
This movie has one of the greatest lines, not just in Bond franchise film history, like in ever. Like it's
In
considered one of the most the cringiest lines of all time, but it is there. And that is drum roll. Do you want to say it or should I
you
say it?
say, no, you
Oh
say
why?
it.
Oh me? Okay, I have to say it fine. It's the end of the film where Dennis Richards and Pierce Brosnan are like bunkered up somewhere, obviously doing sweet little nasty things to each other. And Bond goes, I thought Christmas only came once a year. I was just like, you know what? Props. Like this is up there with my. I would put this in the same Hall of Fame I have reserved for the likes of Race 2, where there is a character named Cherry, and Anil Kapoor looks at her dead straight in the face and says, "I don't have time to pop your cherry." And I was just like,
Yeah.
wow. This is that line. This is that the same strata of cringe.
Yes, agreed. And like I said, the characterization is a little hard to swallow. That standalone Denise Richards looks really good. Like
She's
just
gorgeous, absolutely
objectively.
gorgeous movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, object very. I think this movie has two phenomenal. Just from a aesthetic perspective, the two Bond girls in this movie
Yeah.
are beautiful as hell.
But yeah, I mean, all things considered, I would still put it like I know, and I don't know if you want to do like an official ranking of the Brosnan filmography at the end of the episode, but if I were to preempt that question and give my opinion, I would say this definitely ranks above. Uh, okay, let me not do that because we still have movies to
Yeah, let's.
discuss.
We still have more. Moving on to the next entry in the franchise. So the year is 2002, and Die Another Day hits theaters, and it stars Pierce Brosnan, Halle Berry, Toby Stephens, and John Cleese and Judi Dench, the usual. I think this is widely classified as the Bond film that jumped the shark or surfed the ice palace, so to speak. It transcends realms of improbability that I don't think were even possible. As a child, when I watched this movie, I was like, what the fuck is happening? This is bizarre. So I will give the movie one thing. It is not boring for a single split minute. Like not at all. This is not Tomorrow Never Dies where the film is just one
But
a
similar
plot.
to the Trump presidency, with this movie, I would like a boring minute. No,
Hey, to be fair, it's just I'm like, what is happening? So there is a North Korean dictator who gets a face transplant to become this English guy. It's just
vocal training, nothing. He just sounds English now.
nothing.
They changed vocal
Yeah, yeah.
cords, tongue, everything is changed.
I think because Mission Impossible did the whole face swap thing in the 90s, they're like, okay, we need to ride this trend. So the Bond film has a history of riding trends, like as we discussed with Moonraker and Star Wars. And then every time there is a big budget event film explosion that happens, the Bond films must try and follow in their path. The 50s and 60s had a lot of thrillers. Obviously, there were a lot of spy thrillers. And the 70s, it was a lot more camp. So there's the black exploitation films were a big thing. So Live and Let Die exists. And it kind of just tends to ride the wave, the coattails of films that they think have the legacy, have the, I would say, the runway to sustain. And I think Dine of the Days adopts it. It is, I don't mind the Bond girls in this. I like Rosamund Pike as what Frost she is, Emma Frost.
Miranda Frost.
Miranda Frost, yes. And I think it's one of her first roles. And then
Yeah.
This is one of her first roles, and Halle Berry is Jinx. She does the iconic Ursula Andrews jump out of. She, alongside I think Ursula Andrews and Daniel Craig, are the ones to have emerged from the sea in swimwear. And I think Brosnan at this point is starting to look his age. He's looking old as shit.
Just the way he's looking Bond and shit. Geriatric Bond. He's got no teeth. The name is Bond. James Bond.
Bro.
Yeah, he does look old. I don't disagree. Maybe not old as shit, but yeah. No, I agree with everything you said. I don't think I like the presence of Madonna in the film or on the soundtrack.
What?
I feel, yeah, I feel they were trying to appeal to American audiences, which is why you have Halle Berry, which, see, objectively, she looks very good and stuff. It's just her vibe doesn't gel with the Bond franchise. It's too laid back and casual, right?
You feel like you're in a
And
different
she's
movie
somebody
altogether.
who's seeking, yeah, and she's somebody who's seeking revenge in the film. I'm like, it's a very casual vendetta, bro. This is like, you have no motivation to be at it. If I get the chance, I'll avenge my family. Otherwise, it's cool. Agila, it's cool. Make me want. So, easy on the eyes. Halle Berry, of course. Doesn't really fit the story for me. Rosamund Pike's character, at least, is a lot more well fit or well written into the
I think
script.
she feels like a Bond character. I think Halle Berry feels
Yes,
like
she feels like a Bond character. The whole face-off thing is insanity. North Korean dude just becoming a British person, and like whatever. And the best part, all of this is supposed to culminate into him using some
solar
diamond
energy.
laser to diamond laser. Let's start. I want to pause on that sentence. I want to leave you with that. I want to let you stew in that term for a second. Diamond laser to focus sunlight like a magnifying glass and burn the DMZ between north and south. He wants to burn the DMZ. Basically, he wants to play that kid who used to torture ants with a magnifying glass, and he just wants to burn the DMZ. And he believes you burn the DMZ, North Korea will attack South Korea. So in his mind, the only thing stopping North Korea from South Korea, apart from the crippling lack of, they're starving there, the famine, they don't have the weapons to attack South Korea, which is far more developed as a nation since the Korea War. Those are not the problem. This one DMZ is the problem. So if I take my diamond laser and focus sunlight to burn the DMZ, North Korea will annex South Korea. And South Korea is sitting there. Why aa jao tum? DMZ is gone means over. We can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
Like what?
One of
First question I have for him is, who was your physics teacher in school? Do they teach physics in North Korea?
I have the answer. The physics teacher in school, Kim Jong-Il.
Yeah, he does everything. I think he used to handle all departments. But anyways, so fundamentally the villain doesn't make sense. You don't really gel with the Bond girls. Oh, and of course you have Madonna in a fencing scene. This was when she was trying to pass off as British. I think when she was with Guy Ritchie.
No, I forgot. I was like, oh yes. I was like,
British
Madonna?
accent.
I was like, Madonna is British, and then I was like, no, she's not. She's from fucking Detroit.
Hey, what are you doing? You're embarrassing yourself on the world stage. That's all I can say.
Do you not want to talk about the Ice Palace?
Of course, I want to talk about the Ice Palace. I want to take a moment to speak. So, again, firstly, that is in Iceland, right? It is famously known that Iceland is green and Greenland has ice. And this Ice Palace that they're talking about happens in Norway, not in Iceland. You could have said Norway and the story would have sounded just as exotic. Why did you have to say Iceland? Famous exporter of geothermal energy because they have so much heat under the ground. You want to build ice palace in Iceland. But okay, chalo. You build your ice palace. How they are demons? They're doing a demo of this diamond laser. I'm gonna say diamond laser with a pause every time. They're doing a demo of this diamond laser by using it to melt this ice palace. You know what's easier? Just wait a few months. It will melt come summer. You don't need your diamond laser. That's one part. And the part that you were mentioning, which is as close to literally jumping the shark, in this case, flipping the Aston Martin, is when he's being chased or Bond is being chased. Yeah, he's being chased
By the
by.
laser. The laser is.
Oh yeah,
I think
the laser is cutting
Zhao.
through the lake.
Uh,
Yeah, Zhao, who is this other henchman of his of Rupert Graves, is aiming your diamond laser onto the lake, the frozen lake on which Bond is driving his Aston Martin. And as the diamond laser comes close to the car, comes close to the car, to avoid the diamond laser, Bond decides to jump mid-air when the diamond laser is right under him, and then he flips again, just punching Newton right in the dick. The car continues to maintain velocity. It's like first law of motion. Fuck that, right? Newton's first law. Fuck that. This car will continue to move at the same rate on its head, on its roof. Four wheels are up in the air. What is the car pushing forward against? So third motion also violated. Cars fundamentally move because of Newton's third law. You put pressure on the road with the tire, the car moves forward because the road pushes back. Here, tire is spinning in air. Car is moving on roof, same speed. Discuss.
like I have nothing to say about this. No, forget the roof is one thing, but the whole the the weird paragliding. What is he gliding on? The car door. He surfs through the waves and then he glides to escape. I don't remember. But it's absurd. It's the sheer absurdity of it is that's what's bothering me. Anyway, this movie is not great. As much as I adore this crazy ice palace sequence, not boring, but not great like either. And I think it eventually sounded the death knell for Brosnan's time as Bond.
And I think that's as good a point to sort of talk about how when he came in, he sort of dragged the Bond franchise back into relevance because that 6 year break really started to put people Bond out of people's minds. The way Die Another Day was received and how his Bond sojourn ended, I think really also prepped people for a completely fresh take on Bond. I think people were ready.
I think also given the emergence of two
9/11.
very unlikely no the emergence of two very unlikely characters in Jason Bourne, who at the time was the new action star. I mean, you had Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, so Ethan Hunt was being revitalized once more. And I think most importantly, the rise of Austin Powers. I think Austin Powers parodying the spy genre did a lot of damage to the James Bond image because this film is, like, I'd say, the most egregious example of all the over the top moments of Bond dialed to 11. Like, it got very gadget reliant, it got very quippy, it got very campy, so much so that it wasn't like a bold take on it, it was just out there for no reason. And I think by around this time is when somehow finally, like, I don't know how this was a thing, finally MGM secured the rights for Casino Royale. So they were looking to reboot the franchise. I think, and I think Brosnan was interested. He wanted to do a grittier version of it, but they were like, "You're too old," so off he went.
To add to your prior point, I do feel, and I just mentioned it in passing, but I do feel 9/11 also, uh, people were not going to watch a flippant take on spies countering global terrorism in a post 9/11 world, immediately after at least, right? That entire space was super somber, rightfully so, and Americans were now starting wars to catch these terrorists and stuff. So you can't really have somebody just you know waltz in, make it look like an easy thing, effortless,
Mhm.
and then waltz. You needed your Bond to now sort of get in the muck and get his hands dirty, get injured, get hurt, lose parts of him, lose things. It can't be shown as easy because like people were in the Middle East at that point actively dying, trying to sort of catch Osama and stuff, right? So I think that also was a factor in them deciding, hey, we need to sort of pull back on all this fanciful bullshit and get
Mhm.
to the roots of the story, right? Bring back that man on the edge, which
Yes.
is, and that combined with them getting Daniel Craig to do it, I think was again super fortuitous, right man at the right time for the job.
Famously disliked.
I remember at the time when the news was being announced, people were like Daniel Craig, but he's short and
Blonde
he's
and
this,
blue-eyed.
that. Yeah, blonde and blue eyed, so he doesn't meet any of the criteria. I didn't have an opinion. I was too young to remember what I thought. I was like, we'll watch the film, we'll see. After the film came out, everyone shut the fuck up. So
Yeah, rightly so. Yeah, I think that's the Brosnan Bond films, like you said, right? Just to summarize what you said, is that important because did a very important thing, but also it it ended at the exact right time. It wasn't like Roger Moore where it had vastly overstayed its welcome, nor was it
yeah.
Connery where he was like, I fucking hate this guy, I hope he dies, and nor was it like Lazenby who was like who didn't want to do it, and or Dalton who they just kind of went away from after a point in time.
Yeah.
What are your opinions on the Dalton bonds? Do you like them? Do you not like them?
They are closer to the source material. His
Hmm.
characterization, his portrayal of Bond is again a precursor to Daniel Craig.
Hmm.
I would say he was the proto Daniel Craig Bond, right?
Exactly. I think it
New to
doesn't work.
town, serious. That said, I know it sounds very unfair for me to say it, but both his Bond films are a little boring
Uh,
because they are so
yeah, they
serious.
they could be any film, is what I think. They could be any action movie. Like that's the thing. I would.
Also that,
Hmm.
which is why I was saying, right? It's also important. Like if Daniel Craig's Bonds came out at a different point in time, it may not have worked as well. You may have a right iteration of a character, but you also have to present it to the public at the right time. 2006, like I said, with the wars going on and right off the back of Die Another Day, for that being the time when Casino Royale released, it was perfect, right? So the public
Hmm.
was ready to receive that. I'm
Yes.
guessing 1980s, whatever, 86 and 89 were the two
87.
films.
80. Hmm.
Eh, Yeah, so I'm
Hmm.
guessing it just wasn't the right time for those
Hmm.
films. In a post-Bourne era, the Dalton films would have worked a lot better.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's very quickly move on to we kind of wrap up the episode. But before we do, let's quickly rank your the Brosnan era bonds in the list from worst to best, according to you.
Was still best. I mean, very
What
easy.
is number five?
Diana the
Yeah,
Big
what is
One,
number five? Oh, okay. So
the four,
number
no?
five, four. Sorry. Yeah. What is so fourth
Yeah,
is for you? Done on the day.
Diana the Day.
For me, fourth is Tomorrow Never Dies.
Okay,
I enjoy. I feel like there is more that Die Another Day offers than Tomorrow Never Dies. I think Tomorrow Never Dies is, as you said, a vastly unremarkable film. I think
fair enough.
Die Another Day, in spite of its diamond laser, is still a significantly more enjoyable watch than Tomorrow Never Dies.
Fair enough. Actually, now I'm rethinking. You know what? Yeah, I would
Hmm.
rather award something for being interesting. I would rather want to
Yes.
punish completely unremarkable mediocrity. So yes, let me revise that. Number four is Tomorrow Never Dies. Fuck that.
Okay.
What the? Then Die Another Day.
Sure.
then World Is Not
I mean,
Enough,
World Is Not
and
Enough.
then
Yeah.
GoldenEye.
Then GoldenEye. I think that's a pretty straightforward. I think this list, I mean, the only thing, the cat amongst the pigeons here was the fact that Die Another Day was the one thing we shifted. So I guess
Yeah,
for the most part, our opinion is largely shared by most people around the world. But
yeah.
regarding the Bond theme songs, I think we might disagree here. Let's go. What is your four in order? I know
Tomorrow
this
Never
is,
Dies.
yeah, number four.
Same number three. It's the same list for me. Number three, Die
Not
Another Day.
necessarily. No, it's not though for me. So I see then number four, Tomorrow Never Dies, shall go. Okay, unremarkable, husky little uh, Ren
Yeah.
number, fine.
Number
Number three, I
three,
think,
Die Another Day. I
I think
don't know
that
what Madonna was doing.
it is considered widely considered to be one of the worst. Yeah, one of the worst Bond theme songs of all time. While
Yeah.
especially when Bond is being tortured in like a North Korean prison. Somehow I feel like I listened to it because I grew up in around that time and I listened to it a lot on the radio and it was everywhere. I think my association with it is more nostalgic than it is with Tomorrow Never Dies, and it's more. It has a little more pep to it. See, Madonna is one of the biggest fucking pop stars to ever lived. She even her ratchet ass shit is probably better than somebody's best work. So I wouldn't. I mean, she needs to quit while she was ahead. I think for me, like I will have a whole episode talking about 80s and late 80s and early 90s Madonna because oh my god, I could go on for like an hour. But this I think was probably like this weird her foray into mainstream pop, which wasn't at the time. It was all over the place, if we're being perfectly honest. And trying to capture that Britney Spears squeaky wave is what I
Yeah.
think she was aiming for. It has its moments, and it's like okay, it's a song that takes you back to a particular time. Now, what is your number two?
I For me, number two is World Is Not Enough because I really like the Tina Turner, GoldenEye.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I really like the Tina Turner rendition of GoldenEye. It's very Shirley Bassett-esque. It's like a throwback to the. It sounds very
Hmm.
similar to Diamonds Are Forever. Yeah, so for that vibe, and I really associate that vibe with a Bond soundtrack more than anything, which is also why I like Skyfall. Obviously, Adele's an outstanding performer, but the
Hmm.
song has
Hmm.
the composition has the same vibe of that classic 70s Bond theme. So that's why for me it is GoldenEye number one, and it outscores World Is Not Enough. But I feel you feel differently.
Because see, I'll tell you, I have the same problem I have with this that I have with the Craig Bonds, where Adele's theme song Skyfall is like quintessential Bond, right? It has the Shirley Bassey influence. It has all of that. It's just that the rock song is a lot better and a lot more memorable. I think You Know My Name is my favorite Bond. I mean,
It's awesome,
definitely
yeah.
my favorite Bond theme of all time. Similarly with Garbage, Garbage also follows the same the bond cards. I think most of them do, and but I feel it has this weird sense of like this epic scale, and it's got like violins and it's got this trudging drum track and very haunting vocals, and in a way it's almost like this weird mix of like Adele meets grunge, right? Because Garbage is famously a very popular 90s band. I enjoy A World Is Not Enough's theme a lot more than GoldenEye, which I still adore. GoldenEye is like this is probably my top five theme songs. Alongside, I think Thunderball is probably the other one that's in there alongside Goldfinger. So this is like I wouldn't change a thing about that opening track. I love it. Tomorrow Never Dies was not great, but World Is Not Enough. I think phenomenal theme song.
Interesting. I like your take. But yeah,
Mhm.
that was most of what we wanted to cover. Anything else you wanted to square off?
Not much. I think we've covered pretty much everything else, right? Is there anything that we should talk? We should. I mean, if you want to mention the best Bond girl in this series, we haven't done that. The Bond girls and the Bond villains. I think personally, best Bond villain for me still. I mean, spoilers. I think we can go into spoilers.
You're saying Elektra King.
Yeah, Elektra King is my Bond villain and the best Bond girl in the series as well. She's both.
Fair. I think for me, in terms of best Bond villain, Xenia comes on a top. When
Hey, she's not the villain. She's the henchwoman. If it is the henchwoman situation, I would have said villain.
okay, fair. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make that pun. If I had to pick within these films, in terms of best Bond villain, I would actually pick Renard because I'm a big Robert Carlyle fan in general. So I think that's also influencing my choice. You said best Bond girl? No, you said best Bond villain. Yeah.
Best Bond villain, best
Best
Bond girl
Bond.
either.
Yeah. Best Bond
Hmm.
girl, I would say. Yeah. I mean, Sophie Marceau, assuming she fits the bill, which she does, I think.
Yeah.
Sophie Marceau
Yeah.
is there.
Hmm.
Scorpio isn't too bad, although she has very little to do.
Hmm.
Worst Bond girl, of which I attribute very little fault to her, is Denise Richards, Christmas Jones.
Yes, no, it's just the material she was given with. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as
Yeah.
not like you consider an acting institution or something, but the fact that the character is paper thin, more to do.
Yeah, I mean, she did what was
Hmm.
on the sheet. So,
Okay, that is the Bond, Brosnan's Bond episode. We have done one on Craig's Bond as well, I think, without No Time to Die. So I think let's just keep doing little revisits of different eras of Bond. I think we're left with. I would do one on Roger Moore just purely because of
I
his
was
range.
just going to say we should do the Roger Moore one.
The Roger Moore one, from a range perspective, there is so much to talk about.
I mean, even Octopussy. I'm like, what sort of.
Fucking
How is this okay?
Vijay
It's called
Amritraj with a
Octopussy.
tennis racket.
Yeah. And just come to India and be racist as fuck.
So racist. I'm like, how? I don't think a movie could be more racist. Enter Temple of Doom. Anyway, that is
Temple of Doom. Like, straight up monkey brains, bro.
hmm,
India में monkey
chill
brains खा
monkey,
रहे थे.
chill monkey brains. Well, that's us. We're at the end of this episode. If you've made it so far, please do give us a like, follow the podcast, and subscribe to the channel. This really helps us. We'll be back again with the next episode in a week or two. Until then, see you. Take care. Thanks for watching or listening wherever you are.